Well, hello. My name is Sally. I am the chief cat caretaker and manager of the Feral Cat Sanctuary. And I thought today I would tell you the story of the sanctuary and how I got involved in it. So this is that story. I moved here to the central coast of California, a couple of blocks off of the ocean, about 30 years ago. And when I moved here, um, there were a number of cats wandering up and down the streets that I was aware of. I didn't pay very much attention to them because at that time, my life was pretty busy and I just had other things on my mind. But as time wore on, I began to notice that the cats weren't looking so well. Um, it looked like maybe a couple of them might be getting really old and sick. And then I found a pregnant mother in my yard looking like she needed help. So I decided that I would help her. I took her in. I knew nothing about helping any kind of an animal with their birth, since I'd never even seen one, never been around one. I was born in the city. I'm a completely city girl, so I don't know what I thought I was going to do, but I had a really good vet that I worked with a lot, and so I had her promise she'd be on the phone for me if the time came that I needed her. And sure enough, I did. The mother gave birth, but she didn't cut the umbilical cord off of any of the three of her little kittens. So I had to do that, which was a very scary time for me. I think I was mostly crying on the phone with the vet, but we got through it. One of the babies, unfortunately, didn't make it, but two of them did, and they were happy, healthy, and fat little wonderful kittens. And eventually, they started to grow up, and mother was weaning them, and so I started spending a lot more time with them. And as I did that, I just fell madly in love with this one particular cat that I named Whiskey. And he was a great tabby, wonderful, just a wonderful cat who I spent as much time with as I could, and I loved him, and I think it was mutual. The time I spent with him was really special. Anyway, at about after about 3 years, one day, Whiskey was missing. He didn't show up for breakfast. He didn't show up for dinner. I didn't see him for a couple of days. Went, looking everywhere I could, and simply couldn't find him. So then I spent my days, I would get in a car and I would drive to every shelter within a 3-county area, which took, probably a little more than half the day to do that. And I would go into every shelter, go look at every cat that had been turned in. And that was a really sad experience just all by itself. Sad cats who were lost, lonely, afraid, sitting in cages and not getting much attention. That was really tough. But I continued to do it for about 2 months. And then I kept getting more and more discouraged, and finally decided that there wasn't going to be any hope of finding him. And one of the ladies that I had seen the most at the nearest animal shelter said she felt the same way, that she was crying when she told me. She said she'd been so hopeful that I was going to find my Whiskey, but she felt the same way, that probably with this amount of time, something had happened to him and that I wasn't going to find him. So right after that, I fell into just a really bad depression, just a really bad, couldn't get out of bed, just barely surviving. Was able to get up and feed the feral cats a couple of times a day, but that was about all. So I eventually got an appointment with a therapist because I knew I needed some help. And when I was in that first session with her talking about what had happened with whiskey, I suddenly remembered that that when I was a child, my grandmother one year felt really sad for us because we were growing up in the city without, any animals to have as, childhood friends. And so she decided one Christmas, I was probably about 6 or 7 at the time. And I have an older sister, 3 years older than I am. And so anyway, so she decided one year for Christmas that she was going to give my older sister and I 2 pure white Persian, pale blue-eyed kitties, about 6 weeks old, as a Christmas present. And that was certainly the best, happiest Christmas I ever had. I do remember some of that day, and how I it was just wonderful. And part of the wonderfulness of that was that the house, the home, the family that I grew up in was a very dysfunctional, very unhappy, scary, sad, sometimes frightening place to live. And so this little furball, I called my cat Jingle, my sister called her cat Jangle, became just this, just being in touch with what happiness and joy was. And I love that kitty. I love that kitty. But after about 2.5 years, I came home from school one day to find out that both Jingle and Jangle were gone. There was, as far as I remember and my sister remembers, there was no explanation as to what had happened to them, why they were gone, where they were, but that the discussion was cut short and that it was pretty obvious that it wasn't going to help at all to bring the topic up anymore, because the answer we had got was the answer we were going to get. And that day, when I remembered that in the therapist's office, it suddenly was clear to me that that was why I had been so terribly sad about losing Whiskey. He must have been just about the same age as Jingle was when I lost Jingle as a child. So it's no wonder that it was a really sad time for me. But I got better. I think just understanding helped me get through it, and I decided to spend as much time as I could with the feral cat colony and help them as much as I could. And so 25 years later, here I am. I've become certainly the crazy cat lady, and am proud of it, I might add. Let me just to make things clear, let me just give some definitions of some things to make everything a little more understandable. What is a feral colony? A feral colony is a group of cats that have come together to give each other support, and probably safety in numbers. And they find an area that has some shelter, some source of food, whether it be wild or whatever food they can find, and they establish themselves in that area and continue to live there as long as they are able to get the two things they need, shelter and some kind of nourishment of some sort or another. So this group of feral cats that I was noticing who eventually were not being taken care of at all, I found out that the group that had taken care of them had one by one just disappeared. So these cats were on their own, trying to survive on their own and not being fed as they had been accustomed to. So that's what a feral colony is. It's a group of stray, or the absolute definition of a feral cat is a cat who has been born in the wild, grown up in the wild, and has had no human contact. Human contact in meaning anyone, touching them, getting really close to them. They remain wild, elusive, come for the food but leave quickly. And that's a feral cat. And stray cats who sometimes wander into a feral colony, and if they're accepted, they'll stay. They themselves also get a little bit feral the more time that they spend there. So, and then the sanctuary part is just what I called this area, vacant open space area that surrounds my house on one side for as far as the eye could see, and around our community as well. It's just open space, open land, agricultural land, and the ocean out beyond where the houses are. And this colony, for as long as anyone can remember, has been existing up on this area that we call the hill, which is behind this little community of homes. And so I jumped in, started feeding these cats twice a day, getting those that hadn't been fixed, either neutered or spayed, whichever it was, and getting them all vaccinated one by one, and making sure that they were all healthy and not carrying any diseases or anything. That turned out to be a huge job. I had no idea what a big job that was. I had no idea how to trap. So I had to learn how to trap cats. And much to my dismay, I wasn't getting help from anybody. The neighborhood just kind of went, okay, if you want to do it, it's yours. So I was doing it all by myself. But I loved every moment of it. It's a tremendous amount of work, but I get such joy from these cats that it's made the work easy to do. And over the years, in addition to trapping and just being around these cats, I've learned a great deal about them, and I figured it was time to put some of this down in some way or another so somebody can benefit from the years of experience I've had working with these great animals. So that's pretty much the story. I plan to put out at least one, possibly two videos a week on either Wednesdays or Thursdays. Might take me a while to get that established, but I'll be covering all kinds of topics about cats, how to raise them, how to feed them, how to nurture them, help them if they're sick, all those kinds of things. And that will be applicable to whether you're trying to help a feral cat colony or you just have one or two cats that you want to get help for. So I hope you'll join me in my videos, and thanks a lot for coming. Bye.